changed. You were scared, unprepared for the heartbreak. Everything you knew faded out of you, stole a piece of you. If I could, oh, I would be a hero, be the one who would take all the arrows, save you from the pain, carry all the weight. But I know that you're brave. Fight on, fighter. Don't let anyone steal your fire. Fight on, fighter. The spirit is alive inside you, yeah. There's a part that you hold, that you lock down. Let it breathe, give it wings, set it free now. Time to make your mark, break the prison bars, show them who you are. Fight on, fighter. Don't let anyone steal your fire. Fight on. Fighter, the spirit is alive inside you, yeah. Stronger than you ever thought. I know you're stronger. Braver than you were before. I know you're braver. Oh, no, you don't have to be afraid. Together we'll face it. So don't ever stop, no matter what, 'cause you're gonna make it. Fight on, fighter. Don't let anyone steal your fire. Fight on, fighter. The spirit is alive inside you, yeah. Fight on, fighter. Don't let anyone steal your fire. Fight on, fighter. The spirit is alive inside you, yeah. Sharp stones, broke bones, truth hurts, yeah, you know. You tried, backfired, you and your busted soul. Lost love, setback, tough luck, off track. Rain clouds on your head, everywhere you go. Tears come and joy will follow, like lightning and the rainbow, like darkness and the day shows. Yeah, the best is yet to come.
Hi.
Hey Mom, how you doing?
Never ever ever give up, no.
Heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him.
This is a true story of all things. God has made me and all creatures.
I And my life story is unfolding within God's story of all things.
After Adam and Eve are trying to rewrite God's good story, it all began to fall apart.
But right then and there, in the actual Garden of Eden, God made a promise about putting it all back together again.
And through him, through Jesus,
To reconcile to himself all things. This is the true story of all things, and I trust God's promises.
Because my life story is unfolding within God's story of all things.
But things got worse and worse. There was such division and disorder and disunity that God decided to wash it all away and start over with Noah and his family.
judgment and grace. God saved them through the flood of the water.
This is the true story of all things.
God promises to save me through the washing of water and baptism.
Because my life story is unfolding within God's story of all things.
God's promise to Sarah was so big and bold that it made her laugh, a baby, at her old age.
But God meant exactly what he said, and God always keeps his promises.
Sarah's son Isaac was a miracle, and even then, God is looking ahead.
To Mary's miraculous son, Jesus. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell.
This is the true story of all things. God the Father made me his child. Because my life story is unfolding within God's story of all things.
Abraham and Sarah had Isaac. Isaac and Rebekah had Jacob.
Jacob's 12 sons became the 12 tribes of Israel, and the family grew and grew.
God brought about a nation, a people, a family.
This was how God was at work in this world, in real places.
Real time, real history.
Real people, real life.
And we are a part of this chosen people. Because my life story is unfolding within God's story of all things.
And still, God's people waited. They waited for God to send the promised rescuer. They waited 400 years in Egypt before God rescued them from Pharaoh.
Miriam and her brother Moses were part of God's rescue mission to bring his chosen people into his promised land.
And God always keeps his promises.
This is the true story of all things.
I'm trusting in Jesus to rescue me because my life story is unfolding within God's story of all things. When God's people cried out to God for help because justice was being trampled and injustice seemed out of control, God sent Deborah to judge.
She showed them the way to the victory, because the battle belongs to the Lord. This is the true story of all things.
And I looked for God, for justice and peace.
David didn't just kill Goliath. He rallied the people of Israel and led them to victory after bloody victory over the enemies of God's people.
But David also fell into scandalous moral failures.
David points us to a sinless descendant, Jesus, who would reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross.
This is the true story of all things. The blood of Jesus is my peace.
Because my life story is unfolding within God's story of all things, through men and women,
Through kings and kingdoms,
through failures and victories, God has been at work in all things.
Jesus is before all things.
And in him, all things hold together.
For by him, all things were created, and through him, to reconcile to himself for all things.
Making peace by the blood of his cross.
This is the true story of all things.
And my life story, each of our stories, is unfolding within God's story of all things.
Never give up. Never give up. Never give up. When gravity pins you down from your feet, stand your ground, set your eyes on the sky, stronger than you know. Tears coming to follow, like lightning and the rainbow. Like darkness and the day shows, yeah, the best is yet to come. So never give up, never ever give up, no. Never give up, never ever give up, never give up. Never give up.
And we do our crunch into a stick.
Never surrender, never, never surrender, never, never surrender. No, never give up, never, ever, ever give up. No, never, ever give up, never, ever, ever give up. Never give up, never give up, never, ever, ever give up. No, never give up, never, ever, ever give up. Never give up. Never give up. Don't you ever give up. Don't keep your head down. You're so much closer than you know right now. Don't you ever give up. 'Cause it's turning around. Don't you ever give up. No, keep your head down. You're so much closer than you know right now. Don't you ever give up. 'Cause it's turning. I was there on the day that your world changed. You were scared, unprepared for the heartbreak. Everything you knew faded out of you, stole a piece of you. If I could, oh, I would be a hero. Be the one who would take all the arrows.
Yeah, I'm ready.
The spirit is alive inside you, yeah. There's a part that you hold, that you lock down. Let it breathe, give it wings, set it free now. Time to make your mark, break the prison bars, show them who you are. Fight on, fighter, don't let anyone steal your fire. Fight on, fighter, the spirit is alive inside you, yeah. were before.
I know you're braver. Oh, no, you don't have to be afraid.
Together we'll face it.
So don't ever stop, no matter what, 'cause you're gonna make it. Fight on, fighter. Don't let anyone steal your fire. Fight on, fighter. The spirit is alive inside you. Yeah. Fight on, fighter. Don't let anyone steal your fire. Fight on, fighter. The spirit is alive inside you.
Sharp stones, broke bones, truth hurts, yeah, you know. You tried, backfired, you and your busted soul. Lost love, setback, tough luck, off track. Rain clouds on your head, everywhere you go.
Tears come and joy will follow, like lightning and the rainbow, like darkness and the day shows. Yeah, the best is yet to come.
Never ever give up, never ever ever give up, no. Never ever give up, never ever ever give up, never give up. Never give up. When gravity pins you down, find your feet, yeah, stand your ground, set your eyes on the sky, stronger than you know.
Tears come and joy will follow, like lightning and the rainbow, like darkness and the day shows. Yeah, the best is yet to come.
So never ever give up, never ever ever give up, no. Never ever give up, never ever ever give up, never give up. Never give up. Don't you ever give up, no, keep your head down. You're so much closer than you know right now. Don't you ever give up, 'cause it's turning around. Don't you ever give up, no, keep your head down. You're so much closer than you know right now. Don't you ever give up, 'cause it's turning around.
Never ever surrender, never, no, ever surrender, never ever surrender, never surrender.